Hey everyone, Pugs here with two new reviews for y'all. Today, I'm covering Drive-Thru and The Hot Shot. For some reason, I thought The Hot Shot was in Season 9, but honestly, outside of Season 9A being this show's transition to the widescreen format, the vibes between Season 8 and Season 9A are remarkably similar. So there may or may not be other episodes for which I make this kind of comparison. As for Drive-Thru, well, that one definitely feels like Season 8 to me. And that doesn't mean anything other than exactly what I just said, don't get it twisted. Anyway, as always, let me just say thank you to everyone who sat down and watched this video today. Or, I suppose you don't necessarily have to be sitting, just metaphorically so. And now, let's just get right into it. Starting us off today is gonna be Drive-Thru. So, as my introduction probably implied, while I do remember this episode and so don't find it to be forgettable, this is also not an episode that I've ever had a really strong opinion about. I always thought it was a pretty harmless one overall. I've rewatched it somewhat recently, as in the last few months, so I've got a decently fresh opinion about it as well. When Drive-Thru begins, its biggest problem stares me right in the face, the Krusty Krab. Listen, I admire this show's commitment to not being consistent, but sometimes I think there's some things that need to stay the same between episodes, and one of them is the general design of the primary locations. I don't mind SpongeBob's grill moving around, but what I do mind is this episode pretending like the Krusty Krab doesn't have side windows. You don't even need to be a background painting aficionado like me to see how this is so very wrong. This would be like if the order of SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward's houses was changed. Which, I mean, Squidward's house has disappeared before, but whatever. You just can't do that. It's going a little too far, and it takes me out of the episode entirely. But I'm not seriously upset by this inconsistency, it's just a mild bothering. And then another thing that, well, it doesn't exactly bug me, but I guess it's something that doesn't really work very well for me either, is the entire plot of the episode. Now, here's what I mean. I know that I've definitely mentioned before how I like that Bikini Bottom is a walkable city with public transportation and the like, probably because I long for such a thing in my own life. But anyway, that's the way I like Bikini Bottom to be portrayed, and so having an episode that is based entirely upon the foundations of car dependency, because why would drive-thrus exist otherwise, is not my cup of tea. Yeah, sure, the show is being slightly modern, or really just slightly US centric, which of course makes sense and has continued to be the case since the show's inception. But there are some aspects of US society that I'd really not want to transfer over to this Sponge show. This is me ignoring that I don't find this country legitimate, but anyway, I know I just pissed off some people, but it's irrelevant. Anyway, let me move on now. So yeah. None of these things really upset me, like, genuinely, but I just wanted to talk about them. Well, okay, let me just say one last nitpick because I can. So, I think that this entire episode kind of misunderstands Mr. Krabs' character ever so slightly, or misrepresents it, I guess. I'm talking about the scene where Mr. Krabs is putting together all the stuff for the drive-thru. SpongeBob comes in with a bunch of stuff that he bought. Okay, that's important. SpongeBob bought it. And Mr. Krabs says that his stuff is better because he made it for free. And, like, yes, this is certainly within the realm of possibility for something that Mr. Krabs would do, but to me, Mr. Krabs cares more about not spending his own money. He doesn't care about spending someone else's. So, you know what? I'm gonna take this as a Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob father-son crumbs moment because Mr. Krabs wants to impart onto SpongeBob his cheap ways. Yeah, I like that interpretation, and now I have no problems with this moment. Man, I love doing that. This is a small thing in an otherwise dull scene, so that's part of the reason why I spent this much mental energy on it. Since it seems like I'm just kind of bringing up elements of this episode today, let me talk about the episode's conflict next. And in my opinion, the conflict of this episode is kinda just a bit ridiculous and not in a good way. The conflict, entirely relies upon the entitlement of the Bikini Bottomites, and I think y'all already know how I feel about Bikini Bottomites being assholes, especially entitled ones. Well, I can enjoy when Bikini Bottomites are assholes, and I have many times before, but it's when it's not funny and annoying that it becomes a problem for obvious reasons. The entitlement really is the standout quality of the townspeople in this episode, and the police officer guy has got to be the fucking worst about it. The fact that, like, this many people are waiting on a drive-thru, please be serious. This is such a small thing, but it's enough to legitimately annoy me, so I'm not a fan. To be clear, I don't only dislike what this episode has to offer. Let me bring in a little positivity. For one thing, Squidward is pretty great in this episode. Like, he's got all sorts of snide one-liners that really help some of these struggling scenes. I also like that this episode features lots of different characters, including Plankton and Pearl. Plankton's segment is only somewhat funny to me. His second appearance in the episode was much funnier. Pearl's was a little too mean-spirited since that scene kind of fails to be funny, but hey, I'm glad she's here. I liked the joke where the lifeguard fish and the other guy crash into each other and the lifeguard fish pulls out like a random part of his boat, being like, and I just got this replaced. So random and funny. And then lastly, this episode uses what is basically my favorite OST in the whole show, Traveling Along, which is a pleasant surprise to me when I watched it because I forgot that the episode used this track. Although no one ever really talks about this episode, I think Drive-Thru has more importance than you'd think in terms of the show's trajectory. It's not the first episode to ever do this, but because this is season 8, it is important to note that this episode uses the complete chaos ending that a lot of modern, as in season 9B and onwards, episodes use and are known for. I mean, it even has Greenhorn Rag playing in the background. That tells you all you need to know if you know what I'm talking about. Yes, other episodes have done this before, but in my opinion, season 8 is the season where these types of endings start to become a staple in the show's arsenal of episode endings, so I'll be keeping an eye on this potential trend that is developing here. Whatever the case may be, I really do love these endings, so all I see are wins in my future. And I also see where this episode is being placed, which is in the OK tier, where it comes in with a score of 6.7 out of 10. You know, when I think about it, it's been a while since we've had a boating school episode, hasn't it? I think that the last time we had one was in season 6, unless we count Summer Job, which I don't really. That may be a Mrs. Puff episode, but it's not a boating school episode. And all this means is that this episode, The Hot Shot, was sorely needed. At least, in theory. Because maybe we didn't need this episode specifically given my less than stellar feelings towards it, but hey, it's the boating school episode we got. Before I even say anything, I just want to let it be known that I am not usually a fan of asshole characters, particularly asshole one-off characters, so characters like Squidward are safe from this. I also do not often care for in-universe celebrity characters. Tony Fast Jr. is both of these, and so he is no exception to my typical rules. Although, I don't strictly dislike him either. I just kinda somewhat don't like him, but am largely neutral. Or maybe apathetic would be the better word here. I also think that racing is one of the least interesting of all sports, so that's not doing this episode any favors. Although I have recently become interested in watching car edits for no actual reason, so that kinda helped this episode a little bit too. Okay, well, anyway. I get why they went with this plot for the episode, but the child of a racing legend doing driver's ed isn't really interesting to me, so that's a little bit to this episode's detriment. I just don't understand why we couldn't have simply had the literal racing legend here in the episode. Would have been funny if we had an open with this racer getting a ticket for some mundane reason and then being forced to go to boating school. More interesting, too. Having it be the racer's kid instead of the racer themselves feels like an unnecessary choice that puts distance between us and the actually interesting part of the plot. I don't like plots that expect us to care, I like when they make us care. But anyway, this is just my feelings on the basic setup of the plot. There is, or was, I suppose, of course, an opportunity for the episode to use this plot structure and still deliver a great product. That is not, however, what actually happened. Yeah, this episode is rather boring, if I'm going to be honest, which I am. I do like that the hot shot kind of provides a bit of an explanation for SpongeBob's bad driving that'll be expanded on in Bumper to Bumper, or I believe it was that episode anyway. So that is one neat thing about these 11 minutes. But unfortunately, that is kind of the end of anything especially good coming out of this plot, and so because the episode doesn't do anything that makes its choice of plot make sense, I am back to the issue I just described of the episode choosing a questionable plot direction instead of the direction that, to me at least, is more obvious. As for the rest of the hot shot, it's pretty meh for the most part. The very beginning of it just barely manages to miss the mark of giving me secondhand embarrassment, which is a good thing. This scene also felt incredibly forced anyway, because why would all of these people be clapping when the Fast family weren't even there yet, and when someone else was walking in to boot? That could have been handled a little better. Or better yet, just scrap this attempt at secondhand embarrassment altogether and have the episode begin in a different way. And then beyond that, everything feels kinda slow in this episode, and not in a good way. Maybe this reflects Tony Fast Jr.'s approach to driving, but even I know that is a stretch. Also, it's kind of weird how Tony Jr. just like becomes friends with SpongeBob, I guess, though nothing indicated that happening until he just lets SpongeBob in his house. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well. I'm trying to say that it feels like there's a piece missing here, like a missing scene or a bit of dialogue or something. We just go from strangers to friends very quickly, which I normally would not have a problem with, but it just feels disjointed as it's presented in this episode. The hot shot isn't all bad, or more accurately, all meh. For one thing, the last 2.5 minutes or so are very enjoyable, and they were what I'd been wishing I'd been seeing like all along. But I digress. I also thought Tony Fast Jr. was not necessarily likable because, as I said before, there were things putting me off of him, but I liked his dynamic with SpongeBob, at least in those last 2.5 minutes. Before that, it was kind of whatever. SpongeBob is also hilarious throughout the episode, and the street race is fun to watch, and it includes a guest appearance from Larry, which is great. The race is also fun, especially once we enter full chaos mode with the cops and Tony Fast himself coming after the two. Something about the high-speed chases in boating school episodes, I love them a lot. And then when SpongeBob completely snaps, I'm dying laughing, so they're certainly good here. But it's a little bit overshadowed by the parts of the episode that didn't work. And I guess that's a good transition point for me to talk about this episode as a whole, though I kind of just summed up everything right there. The Hot Shot is an episode that had potential, being a boating school episode we really needed, and including this interesting basic setup of someone really good at driving, like professionally good, being paired up with SpongeBob, but it just took a bizarre approach to this plot that didn't work for me. And on top of that, the episode didn't get interesting until its last 2 to 3 minutes, which isn't a good look on the best of days, and so I have no choice but to put this episode in my okay tier, where it comes in with a score of 6.2 out of 10. As always, I'll be ending this video with some closing thoughts of mine. Well, that was a pretty fast turnaround from Season 8, huh? Started off real nice, and then boom, 2 okay tier episodes in a row. At least they weren't abysmal. But I'm interested to see how the rest of these first handful of episodes will play out. Will Season 8 get back on track? Is this going to be more of a boring season? I don't think 4 episodes is enough to make any definitive statements just yet, so who's to say? I'm just curious to see where this will all lead, and I hope y'all are too. And then to bring up the hot shot again, this is one of those episodes that I think I was a bit harsher on than I needed to be. I decided to stay true to the review that I had of this episode on SpongeBob Mania, but I think I look at it a little more positively now than I did before, and while some of my words reflect that, the score doesn't quite. But rescoring my reviews is something I do very, very rarely, just because it could seriously mess up some shit down the line if I rescore too much. And I don't want to deal with all that. But I'm pretty sure I said in my first review that I ever made that my episode scores are kind of in flux, so I feel like my bases as far as that is concerned have been covered. And yes, it is true that I watch car edits. Like, literally edits made by car enthusiasts. Why? I have no idea. It's like the dancing fruit, except with cars and funk music. It's just what has entranced me. Alright, well, I think that's just about all I've got for y'all today. So I'm gonna close things out here, and I'll see y'all in the next review.